Europe, again, anyone with over 100,000 euros in the bank is to have 40% to all of their money to be taken, to be transferred to the mega rich. Cyprus bank bailout. Again, this is all happening, and our news won't even say that they're taking money. They just call it a bailout. So, Cyprus is happy. They've gotten their bailout. I told you more than a decade ago, because it was in IMF and World Bank plans. I wrote about it in my book, Descent into Tyranny, 2002. Their own documents, they plan to bankrupt Europe and the U.S. and transfer the jobs to China, but they don't completely trust China, so they'll keep our military just to menace them. It's all about not having any one group that can stand up for itself. And now, even mainstream news admits most of the debt is not that of the people in Cyprus. It's gone to back up private central banks' debt. And first they were going to take 10% out of everybody's account. Now the deal, we have the official EU video coming up, is 40%. The top 40% of bank accounts, that's a lot of people, will have 7 to 15% taken out. Now they're talking about it in other countries. So foreign banks taking money directly out of your bank account to pay them, that is the essence of the New World Order. Joel Scalzi.
Yes, well, the Cyprus has taken a turn for the better for the EU. I keep saying time and again they will do anything it takes to keep the EU alive and not let these countries leave, and that has proven out correctly, even though they have really had to pull all the stops out against bank accounts in order to do so. They did the populist thing by saving those with less than $100,000 accounts. But what they did basically is eliminate the second largest bank, the Lycos Bank, and they've taken 40% of the largest depositors of that bank and transferred it to the Bank of Cyprus, as well as all the $100,000 of below accounts from Lycos into the Bank of Cyprus. So they've made one bank, completely liquidated the second largest bank, and taken 40% of those accounts. And now that's a major, major haircut. But remember, they made investors in the Greek banks take a 50% haircut during that bailout. What's interesting, though, is that I found out that the majority of the Russian deposits had already left that bank, and it transferred their money over to the Bank of Cyprus. And so essentially they let the non-Russian large investors take that haircut in preserving the Bank of Cyprus. But at the same time, because they have completely destroyed the trust in the banks, they have no definite opening date for the Bank of Cyprus. They still have a limit of 120 euros a day for people to take out of their ATMs, and they're going to have limits, indefinite limits, on further withdrawals from the Bank of Cyprus after this so-called thing is resolved. So what it means is Cyprus is done as an economy. They're just simply, I don't know how they're going to survive. The banking economy was about 8 times larger than the real tourist economy. So what they're going to have to do is prolong this until they can get the major gas fields online in Cyprus, which have the potential of replacing about 40% of Europe's gas needs. That's a cash cow I think they're holding on to for future use in Cyprus. They have done it to specifically, as you say, to bolster the private interest of the Bank of Cyprus. They've made some people whole, and they've taken everything from other people. Remember, when you liquidate that account, they say they're taking 40%, but actually the whole bank is being liquidated. And that means that even for the first time, senior bondholders, the first in line, are having to take a haircut, though from what I hear from my European sources, it's not very much of a haircut. They are taking the unsecured creditors over $100,000 and making them lose everything.
Fox Radio, CNN, they're like, boy, Cyprus and the Cypriots got the help they needed, a bailout, when it's not their bailout. It's pure global mafia robbing a bank to prop up the EU. Here's another one. Europe, 100,000 savings now considered wealthy. Everybody above that, 40% peeled out of your account. And as Joel was just pointing out, the rich had already gotten the word. They're all exempt, the truly rich. It's the middle class they want to shut down. It's always the mega rich robbing the middle class. That's what Bill Gates, all of them, that's what Warren Buffett's about when he says raise taxes. He gets bailout money. Cyprus bank bailout agreement is pure theft. 40% of private deposits to be looted from selected accounts. Words of warning, get your money out of European banks. Cyprus strikes last-minute EU bailout deal. London Guardian. It is not a bailout. A bailout would be a bank coming and bailing out the country that has bad credit. But the very banks are giving us bad credit ratings while they themselves are the black holes of the derivatives, the black holes of the derivatives. Why are they so bold as to start doing this? Is it a test to see if they can get the media to just normalize this new direct taxation to the globalist?
Well, Alex, they actually had no other choice. There wasn't any money to extract. Normally, as in Ireland, that required the taxpayers to pick up the tab for a portion of the bailout on condition of them giving European money into them. They, in fact, did hand over 20 billion euros from the banking system, the central bank and the IMF, to these banks to make them whole. And they liquidated one and took money, what was remaining in that bank, and gave it over to another one. Remember that the 40% is only an average, Alec. Some people lost everything in this, and the highest senior bond stakeholders maybe lost 10%.
You cut out when you mentioned the point about some people lost everything. See, my mind isn't even computing that. In fact, they talk about that in psychological warfare, how our minds tend to automatically lessen how bad something is. I forget the name of that, but I guess it's called denial. That's right. People accuse me of exaggerating. It's worse than that. Some people had everything taken. Go ahead.
That's right. As I say, it was an average of 40%, and most of the medium-sized, middle-class, wealthy lost everything. The senior bondholders had a stake probably no more than about 10% that they had to give up. But you're absolutely right in the analysis that Cyprus simply has no income to service this additional debt. They're taking the debt, but they're going to have to give more bailouts until the gas comes back on in Cyprus. They've got huge gas reserves coming online, hopefully in 2018 or 2018. Until then, Cyprus is going to be in red ink, continually need more bailouts. The Spanish and Portuguese savers are saying that they're next. I think you're going to see some pretty stiff runs on the banks in Spain and Portugal and Italy as they transfer money out of those banks into the safer German and Swiss banks because they know now that everybody's at risk of having their deposits grabbed. Now, I want to mention one other thing. I've had a long history of people asking me advice. I keep telling them, don't put your money in overseas bank accounts. Everybody wants to avoid the IRS trap here and get the money overseas. And I said, someday you're going to lose it because they're simply going to cut off access. And this has made believers, and a lot of them, you're going to see a run on overseas bank accounts, repatriating it back into the United States.
And so short term, this will probably help the dollar?
Absolutely. You know, the dollar is being helped right now by the fact that most countries are inflating much higher than the dollar percentage-wise. And that's why gold and silver are flat and slightly declining, because the dollar is looking strong relative to all of the other weaker currencies.
Now, I know you're familiar with Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, former head of the Treasury and Policy, the father of Reaganomics. He says it's a triple bubble. I mean, obviously that's true. Bonds, and then, of course, you've got stocks. And there's really more than three bubbles if you count real estate and other things. But what is your take on how long this can go? Because obviously it's being orchestrated at many levels, but if Cyprus and Europe really are having real problems, couldn't that cause a chain reaction? At first, it will make us buoy, but won't it cause problems after that first bubbling effect?
Well, it could if they failed to support it. I mean, they've got enough means with the huge dollar base that they have to continue to inflate. The Fed can throw out almost $9 trillion a year and not exceed 10% inflation of the money supply. So they've got a tremendous power to continue to bail out. The great danger is if they get into a high inflation situation, it would force interest rates up, which would collapse the phony recovery that we're seeing. So I think they're going to work very, very hard to keep bailouts to the minimum. That's why they had to take some of these deposits instead of making a pure bailout so that it wasn't as inflationary on the euro. But they can keep going, and I believe they're going to do whatever it takes to keep going until war comes, because war gives them cover. They don't get the blame for any banking collapse then. It's the war that causes it. So I think we're going to see it stretch out until Russia and China finally attack the West. Let's just assume the worst case scenario. We do suffer nuclear war. They do put us into a new world order in reaction to that. There's no way you can prepare and gather people in advance. People have jobs, people have varying financial circumstances, and even if you were able to get together, knit together a very big group, you'd get infiltrated, there'd be infighting. What I think is going to happen is that if we, like you're doing now and what I'm doing, Alex, trying to get people to prepare for both scenarios. If we win, that's fine, but at the same time, we have to prepare for a takedown. We have to prepare for a loss in advance, prepare an orderly retreat. If people have prepared so that they can survive this nuclear war, I think we're going to have to rely upon the individual inspiration of God as people are driven out. You know, right now we're all spread out around the world. I think God is going to drive people out of the big cities when no longer have jobs to keep them there. And
God's going to make us get self-sufficient.
They're going to feel the inspiration to go to places where it's safer, and they're going to congregate to places which have a reputation for being safer. And then we'll have a majority of people in those areas that will be able to contend with the New World Order and reestablish liberty. That's why I don't even recommend that people try to join survival groups like the Citadel forming a walled city. It just makes you a target. I think it is sufficient for people to prepare as best they can. And if they can't afford a retreat, they prepare where they are. They get to a fairly safe place in the outskirts of cities. They prepare to leave when times get bad. And then I think we can knit together a society, and I believe in informal networks of people, of support networks. Not that you have to meet every week or make yourself a target, but informal lists of people in your own mind that you know you can trust.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. People always say, trust me, trust me, trust me. You can only trust somebody you really know. I always say, don't trust me, know me, and then you will have trust. When I study the globalists, they are all, at the final equation, Luciferians. Well, how is there not a Lucifer if the establishment wants us to be atheists, so we don't even know this game's going on, and then the top people, they know Lucifer's in charge. They believe Lucifer's given them power. All these globalists, when you really look into what they believe, they think they've been given power by Lucifer.
We have to remember, as you have said many times, as Dr. Stan Monteith has said, this is a satanic conspiracy at the core. It's the only thing that explains this generational effect, why this goes on century after century in a seamless manner. No single evil individual capable of keeping a conspiracy going for 3 generations, let alone 10 or 12 or longer. But the key to how this operates is this form of immunity, and I've hypothesized that not only does the conspiracy promise immunity on earth against judgment, and that's why they have to control the courts, but it also promises immunity from God's judgment, and that's what this quest for immortality is all about. You know, it's part of the facade that you can live forever without God, without the resurrection, without the atonement, without Jesus Christ. And I don't think they'll ever get to that. I don't think it's possible. I think it's a violation of the limitations of physics that God places upon the earth. I mean, obviously, he doesn't restrict himself to the speed of light. He can make right-angle turns at hyperspeed, but human beings can't. And I think there's certain limitations about this testing portion of the planet that man, no matter what they're promised by Satan, won't be able to do. But they will try, and I know that eugenics is part of that. They are going to use war and other biological and chemical weapons, vaccines and other things to destroy a lot of people. But we do have the ability of God to guide us and direct us and help us. There will be a remnant preserved. We will be able to fight back. That's part of the test on earth. This is not a hopeless situation, no matter how much power that they have.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Alex.
Get his film, Strategic Relocation, Infowars.com.